Well, it has been a very interesting 24 hours for me, which, long story short, I'm living in a part of the world where that not only are there one night military jets flying over, and then the next night, fortunately, civilian jets flying over. We're never sure which is going to be. That's the world I'm living in. Where we left off last week in Thursdays with Mike was discussing childhood in Ottumwa, and I'm fascinated about what life was like in the 1950s. Ottumwa, what was like? I've not looked this up, but like relatively speaking, how big was Ottumwa back when you were a child? Like, could you bicycle from one end of the city to the other?
No, you'd have to cross the river because the Des Moines River goes through the middle of town. And you have the north side and the south side. North side was considered the moneyed side of town. The south side was considered the working class side of town. That's where we lived. Town of about 32,000 when I was a kid. Major employer was John Morrell meat packing, and the headquarters were in Ottumwa. By the time I got to high school, they'd moved the headquarters of the company to Chicago, I believe, if I remember correctly. And meatpacking kind of dwindled then as an industry there. And since then, the city has declined. I can't tell you the population, but it's well below the 30,000 that it was. Economically, a lot of depression. Had a Target store. It's an empty building now. A lot of stuff like that. They had a Hirschberg, whatever. I think that's closed. Downtown, like most cities, is nothing like it was. If you went there back there today, uh, but the high school's still there, standing big and tall and proud on the hill.
Well,
Something
I,
about the
I just
size
looked
of
it up.
classes. So
I just looked it up. The population of Ottumwa is 25,000, so it has declined. To anybody listening, that doesn't sound like a lot, but when you consider that everywhere else in America has quadrupled or more since then, actually declining is shocking. So, yeah, and you do, and I'll try to put in some pictures of the school because the school he's talking about it is a magnificent school. So that is I was only there for speech contests of which Mike was our coach, but that was so was it when you were there was that like was it the entire like junior high like who all went to that school when you were there? Because it is a magnificent
there's
school.
10 through 12. My graduating class was 515, 530 kids.
Wow, that's a big class.
Oh, they were huge. They were huge. Yeah, I mean, there were kids in my class I never met. I mean, with 500, I didn't know kids. So I remember sitting in graduation thinking, oh, speeches, so this isn't going to take long. And then they started to do diplomas. And then it took forever, to do 500 of them. Um, but yeah, they're not, I don't know what size classes are now, maybe a couple hundred, maybe more than that. I'm not close enough to the community anymore at all.
Right, right. Well, the reason it surprised me it was that big is just the fact that Benton Community, where you coached us, the class of '87, we were exactly 100, and classes are bigger now because I've added Norway. So now they're like 130 or so. But I mean, Benton Community, our class was exactly 100. So
Have they grown? Because I wondered if they had, when Norway came in, they started to lose students going to Prairie because there
right.
was, a lot of concern about that
Right.
addition of
So
that.
there's some open enrollment loss. There is, but Atkins
Yeah.
has more than doubled from when you lived in the area. Atkins has more than doubled. Newhall has grown. So Atkins and Newhall have grown so much. In all truth, if Benton Community had to do it all over again right now, there's no way the high school would be in Van Horn. It'd probably be in Newhall because the population center of Benton Community now is pretty much Newhall. The western cities of the county, no population. So it's
And Atkins is huge compared to what it was. I mean, I've been there. I didn't think Newhall had grown that much. That was the town, that we lived in
yeah,
when you were in high school, when I was
it's
teaching there.
it's
I
grown
don't
a
think it's
little.
grown
It's grown a little. But I mean, it's
a little.
Atkins' huge growth, and also Norway has grown, and then not Ely. Um,
Fairfax.
but Fairfax is not. Anyhow, there's a city that's part Benton Community that I can't think of. Anyhow, it's Prairie on one side. It's same thing of like railroad tracks. Prairie on one side of the railroad tracks, Benton Community on the other side of the railroad tracks. Can't think of it. Doesn't matter. But yeah.
This
I
is
get a kick
highly.
out of things like that. That like Shellisburg is divided by the railroad tracks. The rich side on one side of the railroad tracks, the poor side of the other side of the railroad tracks. It's just amazing how one small town can have who and because one of my best friends is from Shellisburg, and he's like, yeah, I grew up on the wrong side of the railroad tracks. So what you described of the river, I totally understand. So, but how did that shape you? If you were growing up on the poor side and you're going to school with the rich kids, how did that affect you as a child? Did that, I mean, like, what was there an income differential so great that it impacted you as a child when you're 8 or 9 years old? Was that an
No,
issue?
we had no idea. I mean, like we talked last time, played with the kids in the neighborhood, rode bikes whenever we went, wherever we needed to go on our bicycle, whatever. Uh, Shopping was shopping, right? We recognized that those probably the businessmen, the doctors, and so forth tended to live on the north side of town, north side of the river. But Tumwa, and I have no idea who wrote it. The school song begins north side, south side, all around the town. We all joined in together to root for OHS. I mean, there was a sense, I guess, of joining the town together when you got to high school. But I did go to high school back in the days when you had 3 days of initiation for 10th graders.
Uh-huh.
So you tried to keep a really low profile because the seniors would come up and make you do dumb stuff, whatever, carry their books or I was lucky because I'm sure they picked on kids they knew more than kids they didn't know. So I just kept a low profile and got along, go along and get along. Um, uh, but I remember that being a thing there. And then of course you had the various groups like you have today, right? The music kids, the jocks, uh, the theater kids. Although music and theater were pretty much that group of kids. I wasn't a jock. I was a theater kid and a vocal music kid. I wasn't a band kid. Um, had a big band, good people, good instructors in choir. I think I talked about Elaine Smart, my high school drama teacher. I started actually with Mullins was his name, then Elaine was there my last 2 years. Terrific young woman. No, not a young woman. She was an older woman. Her husband was a Jostens. If you know Jostens' name, the jewelry, right?
Yeah.
Class rings and so forth was Jostens. And he was like an area rep for Jostens. So they lived on the north side. And she had taught at Parsons College in Fairfield, Iowa, which was known as a school for Chicago rich kids to come back to, go to a small private school. It is now Maharishi University because it eventually closed and Maharishi bought it and they have made a university there and have a high school there in Fairfield. Um, just all kinds of dumb, you know, dumb pieces of information.
I have, yeah, well, but that dumb piece of information, now I have to insert a personal point of privilege that the one of the few times where my mother was genuinely upset with me, I was fascinated by Maharishi University. I just wanted to see because the whole thing was that the people who levitate, and so I so wanted to see that. But they wouldn't let you inside the domes to see the people who levitate. And so I was fascinated by it. And so I actually pursued going there only
Did
because
you?
I wanted to see I was fascinated by transcendental meditation. I was fascinated by that. So anyhow, I'm working at Montgomery Wards. I'm selling TVs and stereos, and I get a call from my mother that two representatives from Maharishi showed up at the door asking to see me, and mom was like, "You are calling them tomorrow, and you are making it clear you are not going there. I am not going to deal with this ever again. This is done." And I was like, "Yes, mom."
Well, and, it's still in existence, and I think it's maybe a relatively good school. Probably
Yeah,
a fine school. The high school, I think, are known as a fine high school because it's a private school.
yeah, and
So
they
it's
and because they attract so much money, because there are a whole bunch of people from Hollywood that are involved with this, and so they have like an endless pool of money, and so wish them well. I just again, it was just a high school thing for me that mom was like, you are not, you are ending this now, and so I was like, okay, but I'm actually the question I actually want to ask you, kind of going back to even before you were going into high school. Um, I mean, I'm kind of fascinated about life in the 50s. So in today's world, Um, okay. An issue that I have evolved my thinking on is school uniforms. I hated the idea of school uniforms when I was in school and like fought against it. Yeah, let that go, Steve. Whole side issue.
But they weren't that wasn't an issue. I mean,
Well, it
we
kind of
didn't have
was.
uniform.
Benton Community actually considered it for a while, and yeah, it was one of my many arguments with Don Gibney as principal. Anyhow, let that go, Steve. Um, uh, but I have a different view on it now, and my reason for a different anyhow, the thought, the reasoning, the good reasoning always has been that with the school uniform, everyone's equal. The poor kids wear the same clothes as the rich kids. And
Exactly.
and so in today's world, I actually really get it because you can have the student wearing the clothes that everybody knows is worth hundreds of dollars and blah blah blah, and where I mean, I'm of the generation where you signified that you were rich because you wore a Nike symbol on your shirt. That signified some wealth and whatever. But I mean, was that as much of an issue in the 50s? My sense is that it wasn't, but I don't want to speak for you. Like the degree that you saw your students when you were later in your career teaching having to wear certain clothes, did they have that when you were in school?
Maybe to some degree, but it might have been more by the group you ran with. So the group of kids that I hung out with, we all dressed the same. You know, what we might at that time have called wash pants. We didn't wear jeans. We wore the equivalent of khakis at that time, collared shirts. But if you looked at, God, I hate to classify kids, but maybe the kids, again, it just seems like you're demeaning them. But there were other kids who dressed in
Well,
jeans and
okay.
shirts or
I mean, you literally did the play Grease at Benton Community. It's the last play I worked with you on.
yeah,
So I mean, Grease is depicting the 1950s, right? So, you
and
know,
the greasers, right? They were
right,
the greasers. And so we had some kids like that. But to realize when I was in high school it was the 60s.
right. Again, I'm not
So
aging you that much.
yeah, so things had changed then by then that we weren't like the greasers of the 50s in the 60s because I graduated in 66. So thanks for aging me. Just slow it down, bud. Slow it down. It's going fast enough as it is.
Yeah.
Um,
And the last edition of Thursdays was Mike, and when Mike is like, I'm not that freaking old.
exactly. But again, you had your bunch of kids you ran around with. It was big enough that at a Benton community, you pretty much knew everybody and you know what class they were in, if you would, in
Yeah.
terms of socioeconomic class.
Yeah.
We probably were aware of that, but you kind of ran with the kids you ran around with, right? You hung out the
Right.
kids that did the same thing that you did. Interesting, I heard they're redoing College Square Mall in Waterloo, Iowa, which is um, between Waterloo and Cedar Falls. It was named College Square because it's relatively near the University of Northern Iowa in this kind of space between the two cities. Um, and the guy that's bought it, they're going to call it the Square. What is it? The mall at College Square. They're going to rename it, kind of repurpose it, and so forth. I hope they can do it because too many malls are dying across the country, and literally dying, empty, vacant, and they're trying to see what they can put into it. One thing they're talking about, I heard talked about on National Public Radio this morning, which was third space.
Right. Right.
A big move to third space, and that's one thing they're going to do there. We probably had third space when I was a kid. Every Friday you went to the ball game, the football game or whatever. But at the YMCA, which we had an active YMCA at that time, they had a thing they called Corral, which had a corral board, and it was just kind of a place you went to hang out Friday nights with music, maybe some concessions, a place to sit down, some booths and so forth, kind of like a restaurant or a cafe. But they weren't serving hot food like that, and a dance floor. And so you'd go to Corral on Friday nights, something to do for kids,
Right.
which became kind of a third space. And I had never thought of it that way until I heard that term today being used both this morning on the radio and this afternoon then on the television. That wow, this third space is all of a sudden a vogue term to use.
Yeah, it
And
is.
we had that.
It legitimately is. The yeah. It all part. I mean, Jonathan Haidt's book on the anxious generation brought up the fact that there is no third space. His like anyhow in his book he tries to outline how phones and everything have kind of taken people away from third spaces because you sequester yourself to your friends that you see on here. And
Yeah.
so he talked about the importance of third spaces and that. I think that's what actually developed the whole conversation on this, which is very, very relevant. Like I
For
just
those that don't know, first space is home, second space is work, and third space was a place where you congregate and
right.
socialize with people. And that we had that third space. Once a week you could do that. You go to a game or whatever, and they had a board of high school students who I wasn't cool enough or in enough to be part of the board. Uh, but that was something we did. However, not being cool, I will make one boast. Starting about second semester, they would choose a teen of the week, and they would take your photo because by then your senior pictures were taken and getting ready for the yearbook. And I was the first teen of the week, um,
That's
or
great.
early on when I was a senior in high school. Whoop-de-doo. But there it is. So, but again,
What's the privilege? What's the privilege you get with Teen of the Week?
you got your picture on a bulletin board.
But I mean, like, okay. One of the worst things that ever happened to me, one of the worst things that ever happened to me was while I was working at Montgomery Ward, I was once Employee of the Month. You'd think that's a good thing. It was not, because anyhow, they never gave it to anybody who works in electronics. And I was the only one in electronics, I think, who ever got it. And why that was bad was any shit job that needed to be done, my colleagues would be like, well, let the Employee of the Month do it. Like for the next year after that. I couldn't live down. And I think I got like
Yeah.
$50. I got nothing. I got a little bit of money for it, but my life would have been much better if I had never been Employee of the Month. So, but like,
Yeah.
so what was I mean, so like, did your friends high five you for being the first teen of the week? Did you?
No, it just was. But I wasn't on student council. I wasn't any of those things. And there certainly were popular and well-known kids, right?
So why do you think you got it? So I think you're underselling yourself. Why do you think you
Well,
got it?
I think I probably chose. I was a good kid in school. Maybe I probably chosen by the faculty, for being a good school citizen, right? And doing
Or,
your
ladies and
homework.
gentlemen, we've learned that Mike Pites was a total brown noser as a student.
Could be, could be. Speaking of brown nosing, are you watching your time? Because I know you have to
Yeah, no,
go.
I no, we're okay, we're okay. Look, I mean, we're coming up on 18 minutes, whatever, but that's okay. And again, this week, I really genuinely just wanted a flavor of what life was like in junior high and high school. That's really what I wanted, and so we've accomplished that. And
Well, yeah,
I really like this. I want you. So I have a goal for you before next week. I want you to try to find that picture or whatever. So I want to see your high school senior class picture. And I'll
I
find
used
one
to have
too, and we can share pictures next week, and that can be a goal for next week.
that.
Um,
That'll take some effort because they put our senior picture on our name card at the last school reunion.
well,
I don't know if I can find that. I'll have to do some digging.
well, that's a good goal for
That'll be tough. You realize that my high school yearbook is 3 moves away, so it's buried God only knows in what box somewhere.
Well,
Uh,
yeah. The only reason I have a copy of mine is because it's literally on the wall of Benton Community, so that's how I know I have a picture of mine. So thank you. And I don't even know how they got that picture. Like I don't know how they, I don't. Mom must have done it. I don't have no idea. They must have contacted her and she sent it to them when they did the Fine Arts Hall of Fame, which I actually think is a really good thing because we had at Benton Community we had the Athletic Hall of Fame, and then years later they were like, shouldn't we be doing something for fine arts? And then they decided to do it for fine arts, which I'm glad they did. But
they picked
um,
up the Speech Kids, right? Speech Kids have got an outstanding performer and various
yeah,
other things
you
like
had to win. I think you had to go to all. I think the threshold was you had to go at least three or five. Anyhow, you had to go more than once. And
that.
so
Yeah.
I
Some,
know I went at least five times, maybe six. And I don't know if they counted in like contests you won or stuff like that. Again, thanks to you, I won every contest with Extemp because of you. So, but
stuff,
anyhow.
stuff.
We normally end this with Mike asking me a question, but I feel like I've already made this the Steve show. But we'll still end that way. If you have a question, if you don't, it's
It,
okay.
Last week we got cut off. Did we get an answer for why we
Why
knew
I came here.
why you stayed and what you found beneficial in staying in the UAE?
Yeah, which is a relevant question given that there are currently bombs going off in my country. So yeah, we did get cut off. The answer is I came here. I'm really good at reading contracts, and so just I read my contract with a fine-tooth comb. And I knew no matter how bad things are here, I can make it through a year. And so I read through, what happens if I leave after a year? What happens if, and so I read through it, whatever, not expecting to remain here at all. So and so I arrived here in August of 2008. And I was like, oh, and I signed a 3-year contract when I came, but I knew the clause if I get out after each year, and I was like, no way I'm going to stay longer than that. And then the number one thing that draws you in for living here is seeing the sun every day. Um, there is something intoxicating about vitamin D hitting you. And uh, you know, I definitely I didn't even know the degree to which I have seasonal affective disorder. Sad. I didn't appreciate it until my college mentor, when they first coined the term in the early 90s, my college mentor laughed and I was like, "What?" And Doc was like, "Kranz, if there's anybody who has seasonal affective disorder, it's you." And I hadn't even recognized that about myself. And it was like he was like, "When we have 3 cloudy weeks in a row, you're not fun to be around." It's like, okay, good to know. So,
Um,
so anyhow, seeing the sun every day, really big. If I moved back to Iowa, I would absolutely have to buy one of those light banks just to get the rays, you know. But in long story, I mean, honestly, it's just life is easier here in 1,000 ways. It's easier here, and so that made moving home less appealing. There's no shoveling snow. There's no, you know,
well, as we wind up, if you want to pick up next time, we can talk a little bit about things I remember about the auditorium,
yeah,
the high school auditorium, and class life, because class sophomore, junior, senior had particular things that were unique to them, and we can talk briefly about that.
that sounds good. That sounds good. So I'm going to end the recording here. We've got enough for this week. It's all good.